morning. Welcome, everyone, and very glad that you could join us today. Again, this is Paula Newcomb, and I'm the Northeast Regional Coordinator from the Indiana State Library's Professional Development Office. I'm at the Kokomo-Howard County Public Library, and I'll be the host and question moderator. So thanks so much to Trina Evans and Susan Bednarz for presenting today. Trina is a branch assistant, and Susan is a reference assistant at the Kokomo-Howard County Public Library. And I also want to mention that Trina won the Differences You Support Staff Award last year at the DIY conference. So at this point, I'm going to now turn the mic over to Trina.
Good morning. I'm so glad that you could join us. We're going to talk about our Nature Explore outdoor classroom. Hopefully this. All right, as you know, just thinking of different ideas, people are always asking, where do you get your idea? And if you work at a library, you know a lot of times that you borrow your ideas from other libraries. I was very lucky to go on a trip for training to Colorado, and I was able to visit the Anythink Library. The Anythink Library gave us a tour, and one of the spaces that I fell in love was their outdoor space. So I started asking a lot of questions. They said they had a Nature Explore outdoor classroom. They talked about how much it was going to be, and I just took a lot of pictures, and I remember playing a lot outside thinking I would love to bring this to Indiana. But again, as you know, with library budgets, that's not always possible. So at that time, it was just a wish. So one of the things on deciding once we did kind of our wish turned into a reality, we received an endowment of $13,000. So once I heard that we had that money, the first thing I came back to was having that Nature Explore outdoor classroom. There are different options that we looked into, like different nature conservancies, just different outdoor models, but really I kept coming back to that Nature Explore outdoor classroom. And one of the reasons is it's a collaborative program with the Arbor Day Foundation and Dimensions Educational Research Foundation. So there was a lot of research, which you can go connect to that website, Nature Explore Outdoor Classroom, and find out all of the research that's provided for learning. Again, I won't go through the whole process of like certification requirements. That's something that you can look on your own on their website. But I did like, it gave us an area to choose where we knew we wanted to have programming. That was part of the process of certification. We also knew that you would have to have continuing staff development. That's something that we always do with our staff. But what I really liked is they had the certain areas that were separated that you had to have, like the music area, the climbing area, the building area, the gathering area, the gardening area. So it really set a tone of what we could do programming wise. And again, when you're thinking about this, you'll have to think about insurance and zoning and all of that stuff, which we can get into with questions later. But really, it set a tone of what kind of programs we wanted to bring to our library that we hadn't had before, such as having yoga outside and having music and a lot of outdoor activities. Another thing that was really great for us, you have to think about when you want to have a classroom, how does that really fit in with the needs of your community, with your library? So I started going to, Rushville is our smaller branch location, and so it is in the town of Rushville. So we started going to their town council meetings. And one of the things that the Rushville is known for, it's a Tree City USA. So it has to have certain certification each year. And they do partner with the library. We usually do like an Arbor Day display for them. So I was able to go and talk with them, and they were, of course, very excited about this collaboration because it really fit in with the town's plans. And then really we started thinking also about the library and our strategic long-term plan. And one of the things that we have in our strategic plan is a service response to the community. We build community-wide loyalty and aspire to become a local destination. And so our goal is to develop our green spaces as community destinations. So by putting this at our Rushville branch, we're fulfilling that goal. One of the great things about the outdoor classroom is it started to drive the traffic a little bit more for that smaller location. People really started seeing the library as an added value to the town, as an added educational partner. So it's really important too that if you do decide to do this, you want to definitely record those community responses and take pictures. That will help you also if you want to get any extra funds or write some grants. Okay, so really the meat. What is the process? So for us, it was a little bit of a whirlwind process. We did this in a short amount of time, which usually isn't typical for a library. I would suggest taking a little bit longer, especially for funding. So when I heard that we had $13,000, I felt like it was a ton of money. So I was super excited about it and thought, I can build this classroom with $13,000. But I really knew I needed to talk to some experts. So I met with a landscaper. Nature Explorer does have an area where you can actually get plans from them, but it's really expensive. So I suggest partnering with someone local. So we did do that. We partnered with a local landscaper, and I asked her to draw plans. I talked about the area that we had and the certification requirements, and then she came up with this drawing. And of course, we loved the drawing. We thought it was perfect. We actually do have a pretty small space, so the drawing that you're looking at currently, there was some modifications. So always be aware that things are going to change, but it's really important to get that design visually so that you can show people. It's really hard to explain unless they can see it. But then she was able to then break it down into phases, and that budget was really important. The first budget that she came back with was $80,000, which was a little bit more than $13,000. So we did do some adjustments, and we were able to modify that proposal, and I think we got it down to around $65,000. But really, she broke it down into phases. I do think if we hadn't done it in such a whirlwind process, we probably would have done the phases instead of doing it all at once. We happened to, at the same time, we wanted to do like some crowdsource funding online, which would have been really great. We did a video, but then Kokomo was hit by a tornado. So of course, funds weren't really going to be put in this area. So it's really important to have a very concise budget, working with someone that also works with volunteers, because she knew that I was going to have to cut the budget by quite a bit. And we'll talk more about how you can do that. But definitely getting a good partnership in your community with the right landscaper is a great idea. Again, community partnerships, really essential. Because the budget was much higher than I anticipated, in our small town, we put out jars at gas stations. In just 1 week, we had like $100. We partnered Master Gardeners. We definitely wanted to talk to them because you have to think about the process of upkeep. So we wanted them to promise hours, and so once they brought that to their meeting, then we received a check for $500. Lowe's, this was one that I really had to be persistent in because they're a corporation. Sometimes when you go to these places, they have wonderful, the Lowe's Heroes, they have these groups that want to go out and help. Well, the first time I went in, they had already promised that year that they were going to help the Humane Society in our town. So I asked if we could be considered for the next year. They again gave me like telephone contact information and email, and I did contact through email and telephone, and I never really got a response. So I just kept going back and asking for the manager again, and again I would keep getting emails and I would send them. Eventually I was able to go into Lowe's and actually talk to someone face to face. And again, I had that proposal in front of me with the pictures and what we needed, and that really finally sparked the help from Lowe's Heroes. So they were able to contribute a shed free of cost. They contribute all of our plants free of cost. the amount that they donated, not just their volunteer help, they did like a big volunteer day where they sent like 50 people. We actually had more people than we had space available. So it was really great. And then we were also able to make a connection because the Master Gardeners had also been seeking a partnership with Lowe's. And that, again, I think maybe they weren't quite as persistent, maybe as I was. So they were able to meet there. And by that meeting, they were able to form a partnership. So we felt good about that. Also, people get really excited, so they start having ideas for you, and you really want to be open to that because you really want to have that buy-in. So we had Doug England. He was also a master gardener. He really wanted us to have this analematic sundial. It's flat, and so like when you stand on it, the way the shadows are on the pavement, you can tell what time of day is. So again, it's another educational component that we thought was a good idea. He didn't offer to pay for that. He did, though, say he would come out and sketch out the marks. But again, I reached out to a teacher at a school that had like an art club, and they were able to come out and paint that for us. So that was great. We did have to buy the supplies. But again, it added to our Nature Explore Outdoor Classroom in a way that we wouldn't have thought about. And then we are on the registry for these sundials. So again, another great partnership. We also reached out. There are, from our United Way each year, they have like a day of caring. And so we were able to go to like the GM volunteer fair. You go with a bunch of other nonprofits and they kind of tell about the organization, and then you're hoping that they'll pick you so that they can come volunteer. So we made a really great connection with GM Cares. So they have now come a couple times to help with the process, because unfortunately some of the days that we scheduled, you'll have this happen, were rainy days, and so not everything could get completed because of the weather. So it was a great group to connect to that we were also able to schedule out different times, and they were able to do all of that work for us and then buy some things that we needed while they realized that we didn't have certain things when they came to work, so then they would just go out and buy it for us. So that was kind of great too. And of course, always providing pizza and drinks for your volunteers is a good idea. And I think because they have such a good time, they always say that they'll come back each year. And that's something that you need to think about, is that continual maintenance or any things. GM is General Motors. That's a factory here. Sorry. And I saw it pop up. It's a factory here in Kokomo. So again, if you have any factories, or if you just want to reach out to United Way and see if they have a day of caring for businesses, that would be a good connection. I don't know what happened to this photo, but again, those partnerships are really important. We're always saying, just don't be afraid to ask. We had one of our librarians here made a connection previously, and so she knew someone on the Howard County Commissioners, and so she was able to send an email and tell all about our project, and they were really excited, and they donated $10,000. So really utilizing your staff and anyone that they know to think about how you could ask for more money is a good opportunity. Even though crowd fundraising is a good idea, if you can get those big chunks, it certainly helps. And we did have that tornado, so we did have to remind them to get that checked us. And another thing, grants. It's a good idea to write grants. There's a lot of grants available for green spaces, and so Duke Energy is a good grant to look into. They have different cycles, and so the director of the library wrote that grant, and it was almost $10,000. So again, really good for our budget. Okay, so you are going to have a little bit of stumbling blocks along the way. Sometimes when you express your ideas, it doesn't always communicate it. So we knew that we wanted to have this messy area. So in the messy area, we have a sandbox and we have dirt, and then we had this like water table. When I saw the water table, I was really concerned because it was like a tub full of quite a bit of water. So I was really worried about drowning. I know that kids can still drown in a very small amount of water, but this was quite large. Our outdoor classroom is not monitored by staff. Like it's passive. People go out there unless we have programming. So if we're in the building, we just really didn't want to have this concern. So once this was installed, I did have them take away the big tub, and then now we have a different insert that's red that's just a few inches. I didn't really want there to be standing water. Also with standing water, there's just mosquitoes and germs, and I don't know. I really wasn't happy. This was probably the only thing that I wasn't happy with, but of course I talked to the landscaper and they were able to fix that pretty easily. But know that things aren't always how you think they'll be. Another thing too with the stumbling blocks, our path is supposed to be ADA accessible, but it's like this fine gravel, and I don't think it is as accessible as we really thought it was. So that might be something that you want to work with a group and think about that too. Also take lots of pictures. These are from our opening day. Again, another stumbling block, if you'll see in the background, there's our tunnel. So we have a neighbor that is right next door, and her house is built right on our property line. So we just wanted to make a clear division. So we put up these really tall wooden panels in the back, and we spaced them out. This was not in our original plans, and we did go over and speak to the neighbor before we started building so that she would know what was happening, keep her in the loop. This wasn't on the original plan. We didn't think, again, to talk to her about putting this up. We thought it was just a great idea. Little did we know she was really upset by these wooden panels because she did want to see what was happening. And then it happened that one of the panels that we put was towards the end of her driveway, and it was actually like a safety concern because she couldn't see the road when she was pulling out. So we did have to remove that. It's unfortunate. It's something that we're trying to fix. We did take it down. We didn't take all of them down because we still wanted to keep up some of those panels and add some things to it that when we have more money later, just for extra passive play. But again, you have to think about the neighbors. It was definitely a perspective I wasn't thinking about at the time. Definitely celebrate. It was really exciting to put all this effort into it. So we did have a big ribbon cutting ceremony that we invited the public to, and we invited our board and just area figureheads. You definitely want people to know about it, and the ribbon cutting is definitely a perfect place for that. And on that day, we gave tours. I do suggest I have a field trip option. When we went to the area schools, we did talk about field trips for a different project we were working on, and we mentioned this. So the teachers were excited that this is something that we could offer. So I do think that having a school field trip plan is a good idea. And then if you can get into those schools and get those scheduled, you can do a lot with it if you have the staffing. Again, when we had the opening event, we tried to do everything that kind of correlated with that outdoor theme. So we had these sand pails where you could make your own trail mix. We kept everything separate in case there was some allergies. And again, we really use those partnerships. As you'll see, there's some tree cookies on the table. We partnered with the Howard County Water and Soil Conservancy, and they were able to make these tree cookies. If you would try to purchase them online, they're actually quite expensive, but by partnering with them, they were free. So that's always good. We had another bequest that was given to us. Roberta Lineback used to be a teacher in the area, and when she died, her family wanted to do something for her. So we were able to tell her about this classroom, and this is where the family decided to donate their funds. Again, we have 2 of these rocks for original bequest and for Roberta. So we definitely wanted to honor them. It was really a special moment because then her sister was able to come out. And then after we had the opening day, we had different groups that came in that were related to Roberta. Like I think she was in a teacher's group, and they came one day as a special trip just to come and see her stone and to see the classroom, and so it was really special for them. So one of the things that you want to think about with your classroom is keep changing things and updating and adding to it. So we really want people to know about this classroom, but it is at one of our smaller branch locations. It's off the beaten path a little bit, so you have to travel maybe like 9 miles out of Kokomo. So for our big summer reading kickoff at our main branches, we decided to do something that would add to it and then also let people know about it. So we bought a bunch of rocks. It's kind of when all of the Kindness Rocks thing were happening, but what we wanted to do is we really wanted to base it off of a book, Only One You. And so we had all of the participants at the summer reading program paint rocks, and then we told them that they were going to paint them for us and they were going to leave them, which I know is sometimes hard for kids to do, but we said we would like for them to leave them so that we could put them as an art installation at our outdoor classroom and they could come visit their rock. And of course they would be able to find their rock because there's only one rock like the one rock that they painted. So it had to do with that book. So that was really cool to be able to incorporate that. So you want to think of different ways, especially in the summer, in the fall months when it's the best time to go outside. And again, I have a lot of programming tips too. And then after that, there's a couple of additional community partners that I didn't touch on that I'll let you know about as well. So with our story time, if you do story time, that's Susan. She does all of our story times. So she really started to focus on the outdoor story times. So she did this really cool program called Not a Stick. And she did a lot of just different programs that had to do with like worms or any kind of outdoor item. Again, don't think about just kids. Adults like it too. As you can see, we have a climbing wall and we have this really great path. Ours is circular, so we use it for Halloween. At Halloween, we have almost 500 kids come through. So that's really amazing for our small branch. That's really an opportunity. We just gave out candy. Susan had the fantastic idea of next year, instead of giving out candy, or this year, we'll actually give some information about like another program or something library related. So really you want to use those opportunities. And also because of Halloween, when we made people walk through and they would have to get candy along the path, then people that didn't know that we had opened that summer were surprised, and then it really made them look at what was in there. Because if you just look across the parking lot, you don't realize that there's an area to play music, and there's an area to build, and there's an area to paint, and there's an area to climb and to tunnel through. So that's really fun to get people interested in our classroom. And then we really say you want to use it year round. So this year we had a winter solstice program, and we had carolers come, and we had Miss Howard County. We put everything outside. It was actually warmer on winter solstice than it was at Halloween. So you just want to make sure that you bundle up. But it was really another great opportunity. It was an evening program. It was family. We had hot chocolate, we had the carolers, we did like a little scavenger hunt, we did little things outside, and it was really fun. And then we had some passive items, so then the adults were able to listen to the carolers while the kids played. So it's really important to think about that all year long. I know a lot of times people want to just do it in the nice months. And another thing that we did, which is really good to help the traffic and to make the experience more fun than it already is, there was an ILF grant called 3x3. And so again, you can look at different grants that are offered, and we did the contest and we won. And our idea, we received $1,000, and what we wanted were these experience backpacks. So we have inside like a little coat rack, and you can check out, so again, this helps for our circulation, you can check out these backpacks, and inside them they have like shovels and pails. As you can see, the twins, they always come. They can then now play in the sand. Otherwise, if they just go out there, they're just using their hands. And then we have little wheelbarrows. We've got bubbles they can check out. As you can see on the one picture, they can check out paint and the roller brushes. And again, that just helps us with circulation, but then also just enhances the experience. We also even have laminated pages of nature activities. So those parents can really get involved, take their kids outside with these papers, and they don't have to try to figure out what to do. We've figured it out for them. So that's something to really look into, the experience backpacks. We've had a lot of success with that. So if you do an outdoor classroom, I highly recommend that. For our whole set, it was about $1,000. Mostly that was the rack to hold it. We wanted to have that like really nice and prominent when you first walked in. Go live, yeah. So we had a mandolin player come, and then he had some fellow friends come along. And so when they were playing, it was on National Neighbor Day. We decided to have this program. So a lot of the area neighbors came out. We did put in our program to bring your own camp chair, so that people brought their own camp chair, or they could just lay out a blanket. And they played music. And then we made sure that I filmed it so that we could put it on Instagram, so that way if people didn't come, they would see what they were missing and then maybe would think about it in the future. And again, this is a patron that came. We didn't have to pay anything. He just really wanted to share his music. It was a wonderful evening. Kids could just run around and play while the parents actually just sat there and listened. And it's at a pretty confined space, so it felt very peaceful and passive, and it was a good day. It's a good neighbor day. One of the really great things about doing this Nature Explore Outdoor classroom is we received a lot of press in the newspaper, which is great. We want the library to be in the news. We want people thinking about the library. We want to hear positive things about the library. And it also helps with our long-term plan of being an educational partner. So we're really pleased at the end of the year. One of the top stories of the year was education. And again, it talked about the library being in the headlines multiple times. So we were really excited about this because it really, once you were finished, you realized that you did something that wasn't just fun, but educational. So we felt like we were really doing our job well.
Someone asked if you rent out the pavilion for family events.
Okay, so that was actually one of the first questions we got when we opened for graduation. And we decided, no, we do not rent out the pavilion. It's something that you can do. Logistically, for our very tiny branch, we have a small staff there, and we have a custodian that's only there in the morning to clean. So there wouldn't be anyone to clean, to set up tables. So what I told the person that wanted to use the pavilion, that it is open to the public. If they did want to come and set up, they could do that, but they also couldn't tell anyone else that they couldn't be there. So they did run that risk because it's open to the public. If they decided to have a graduation party, that would be fine. But if the neighbors' kids came out and wanted to play, that would have to be. And then also, I think when people rent things, there's expectations of cleanup and set up, and just for our branch, it doesn't work. It might work for another branch, but not for ours. Good question. Here are the resources, but I did want to add a couple things that I didn't before. Kohl's Cares, if you have a Kohl's in your area, they're another organization. I don't remember if I had a picture of them, but we received $1,000 from them. They have it. It's very easy. You go online. They have like a day where they send out volunteers, and if their volunteers come out, you get a check for $1,000. So again, it takes a little extra time, but a really good area. Also, I didn't talk about the climbing wall. The climbing wall was an Eagle Scout project. Again, using the Boy Scouts, the Eagle Scouts is a great idea. So all we had to provide were the supplies, and because it was a part of his project, it also helped with that educational factor. We were helping him. He had to go through the steps of, giving me his proposal, and it was a really great opportunity. And when we just paid, so then that also saved on cost of having the landscaper do it. Anything that we could get volunteers to do to decrease that budget cost, we did. We asked everybody for help all the time. Also, your friends of the library, that's another great place. And then the school, which I didn't mention, we kind of did this whirlwind thing. So we did like 1 week, it was planned very quickly. And that week, I think in 4 days, the Western, which is the school closest to it, intermediate, and it was only the intermediate, not the primary, for 4 days raised $600 with a change drive. So again, I think that's an opportunity. If you have more time, you could plan that really well with the school, and I think you could get quite a bit of funds for your outdoor classroom. We also, if there's any businesses, it just so happened the head of the branches, she knew someone in Tipton who wasn't, so it's not even actually our county, but and called Integrity EDM. They gave us a check for $500 just because she asked. So really, it's not always just in your county. People just know you. They like supporting education. They like supporting libraries. So if you can ask, it's highly recommended. It does take a little bit of personal time. For me, you didn't have to do it that way, but I was very set at trying to whittle down that budget. And so when I get excited about something, I get really excited and very persistent. And until someone tells me no, I keep asking until they say yes. And I think that is it, unless you have any questions for me or Susan, especially if you have questions about programming. I think Susan might have some more to offer on that. I don't usually do the programming, that is her. Did you want to add anything?
Let's wait for the questions.
Okay. I did want to add really quick, I forgot, one of the things that I did want to do for our space, I really wanted to incorporate a story walk, but because of the green space area, it's actually not large enough. There are not enough steps. So there are plans online that you can get on how to do a story walk and how much money. It's only a couple $100. If you're able to do that, I would highly recommend that. It just didn't fit in our area, and I was sad about that.
What are the concerns with the climbing wall of kids falling?
That's more like an intro, but it's really not as tall as you think it is. That was a question. We just don't. Kids fall just walking on a path, so we weren't really too concerned about that. I think if they did fall, they probably couldn't hurt themselves too much. But again, I think that's just with kids, they can get hurt anywhere, so we didn't really worry about that too much. Yeah, it's really small.
Another question, what have been some of your more successful outdoor programs?
Susan?
Well, I have to say that probably the Halloween trick-or-treating night brought in the largest number of people. Some other special programs we've had outdoors, we had a horseplay program where we had a local equestrian center come and educate the kids about how to care for a horse and other animals. She brought a rabbit to show about the care and feeding of animals. We're planning a National Mud Day Storytime celebration this year, and we're going to have a lot of mud, like an obstacle course going on. We'll have stories that are tied into the theme of mud, and we'll make mud pies and that kind of thing.
Another question, how did you maintain the space?
Yeah, so you definitely want to think about maintenance. And so what we did was that partnership with the Master Gardeners in at their meeting, they donated so many hours each year. So again, you do want to think about that. We also have different days of the year where like the local school will do a volunteer day, and so they can come out and weed. You want to think about, if you have a maintenance staff, that is something extra that you'll probably be asking them to do. There's definitely been things that we didn't think about with like the weeds. And so again, using Master Gardeners, that's how we do it right now. We're just now almost 1 year in, so we haven't had too many concerns at this time.
Another question, how about vandalism? Any problems with that?
Yeah, so that's another thing. it's not, I mean, I guess little kids came in, and they did get really excited. We had a bunch of tree cookies, and so they broke all of those. And then on our stepping stones, they were throwing the tree cookies on there, so they did break the stepping stones. Luckily, because it is a small neighborhood, the neighbor actually came out and told the boys, they had spilled some trash too. She made them pick up all the trash and told them that she would be watching them. So they were frequent boys. I did go out there and you know, talk with them about that too. So not anything horrible, but just a bunch of little boys that were a little bit destructive. So that definitely is a concern. And so I did request a quote this year from our landscaper to see if she could replace those stepping stones, because I was really sad that those were broken.
Okay, these are great questions. I know I've seen some other libraries in the Northeast region that I've been to. One place has a storybook corner outside, and I know your outdoor space has inspired another library that is in the process of putting together an outdoor classroom. So it's really a cool idea. Also, things about sensory gardens I've read, things with sound, smell, touch. Okay, we've got one other question. Are there any legal issues about someone getting hurt outside?
I'm going to let our director take this question because it's not the part I'm involved in.
We did have to add some insurance. It's, you know, obviously a different space than the internal, you know, your typical library building. So we added insurance that would cover, you know, any kind of thing that could happen outside that's a little different. And it's not terribly expensive. I mean, I'm sure that the idea of expensive depends on what your overall budget is, but some of that is just in case something happens to that, you know, like if we had to rebuild the pavilion, what would that cost us? You know, we wouldn't necessarily have free, you know, volunteer labor the second time around, that kind of thing. But it is something, you know, that you would want to make sure you insured if you add anything like that. And ours is a few $100s a year. It would probably depend on what other insurance you already have and how it works. I mean, commercial insurance is sort of a complicated thing. So you would want to know how your insurance works for any of your facilities and then make a decision on what you needed for an outdoor space based on some of that.
And then I did have another thing to add. There's so much that I forget. So again, about those partnerships, we had a musical area. That musical area, we partnered with there's a school, Kokomo, and they have a career center. So we actually partnered with the career center, and they made it their project to make our musical instruments. So the one is like metal tubes, and then you would just, you know, you hit the metal tubes. So they made that, and then we have another that's like PVC pipes that you hit and make music, and then these boxes that are like the drums. So again, all we had to pay was the material cost, not labor cost, which labor is usually the very expensive part. So that's another area to add. Any other questions? Well, as you're thinking of other questions, Susan's going to go a little bit more over programming.
Okay, so you're probably already doing story times inside, and you can really take any inside story time outside, but some themes lend themselves particularly well to outdoors. And one of the themes that I did this summer, or last summer, we had a month that we called Go Wild Outside. And during that month, I had different themes like worms, and I brought in live worms. We have some raised garden beds, and so we were able to put the worms in the garden beds and explore those with magnifying glasses, and it was really fun to do that outside. You can also do story times about bugs, balls. We did a going on a bear hunt theme, an ice cream theme. Of course, camping themes work well outdoors. So there's a really lot of fun things you can do when you take your story time outdoors. Some special outdoor story times we did were, we had a Shark Week outdoors, and Trina mentioned the Not a Stick. That's based on a book by Antoinette Portis. So we read the story Not a Stick, and we did a craft using sticks and some activities that way. This summer I plan to use the outdoor gardening beds in a new way, and I want to start a program that will be a month-long program called Little Sprouts. And the children will hear a story each week, and we'll plant something in the garden beds, and we're going to concentrate or focus on my 5 garden senses and make a little book about our senses outdoors. I also do a monthly craft class, and we took that outdoors last summer. We made nature crafts using pine cones, leaves, stones. We made wind chimes. We painted pumpkins. There's just all kinds of things you can find on Pinterest when you Google nature crafts. Another programming idea that I had was getting women out in nature, Women in Nature, where we would offer yoga, Tai Chi. You could do an outdoor book club. You could start a walking club. You could do outdoor knitting clubs, and of course gardening clubs. So those are just some ideas, and I get a lot of my ideas by searching nature centers. People that are already having a nature center and already having programs. A lot of times they have a much bigger space and more nature than we can offer, but you can get a lot of great ideas that way.
And I have another addition that I forgot to mention earlier. So when we did the proposal and I met with the landscaper and she did the different phases, one of the areas that was the most important for us was the pavilion. So that pavilion that they built, it was really good for our branch because we had usually had to do like off-site summer reading programs, like the performers during the summer. So it was another way to bring the programs back to us and then look at outdoor programming. But one of the things that we did decide, we did not go with the landscaper to build the pavilion. We went with a contractor. It felt like that the contractor had a little bit more knowledge building, not landscaping. So we did have someone else do that. So you just want to be thinking about that too, that you don't hurt anyone's feelings, I guess, step on their toes. But again, we had to do what was best for the library, and I felt like that we needed a contractor to actually build the pavilion. Even though the landscaper said that they were capable, I just felt like it would be better to have someone else do that. And then they were able to work together for the rest of it. But that's also another part. Just because you have one person give you the idea, you can then really manage how you want those phases to look and who you want to do things. So just know that if you do have someone draw up something, it doesn't mean that they're the lead on everything. Are there any more questions? With me. Well, I do have, so I made myself a big binder of Nature Explorer. That's another suggestion that I have for you, that if you do decide to do this, you'll want to keep everything in one place. So I do have all of my notes together. So if you do have questions, I know this is like a quick overview. It was definitely a lot more detailed than that. You can always email me. I think that they're going to put my email address up. Or you can email them too, but then I think it'll just get passed along to me. So if you want to email me directly, I do not mind answering questions. I don't mind if you want to come out and tour our space. I think it's always good to look at a space and decide if that works for you. And really, when you see a space that's been built, then you can really say, oh, I would do this different, because our space doesn't look like anything like the Colorado Anythink space. They have a very, very large space. So ours is very different. So you just have to figure out what works for you. So you're welcome to come check it out. You can schedule a time with us, or you can come at your own free leisure time. But please don't hesitate to email questions. We love our Nature Explore Outdoor Classroom, and we love talking about it. So we are here for you.